My name is Justin Danhof. I run the Free Enterprise Project at the National Center for Public Policy Research, where for the last 12 years, we've been engaged as the only right-of-center organization consistently with shareholder activism. Compare this to 80 to 120 groups annually on the left that are well-capitalized, that are engaged in this space. I filed over 200 shareholder resolutions and attended more than 250 shareholder meetings over that time. But this isn't about me and my project. I've been living for that long in the belly of the beast, so I've watched and learned how the left has co-opted business in America to the point that so many large companies now walk in political lockstep with the far left. Some call this woke capitalism. More often it falls under the banner of ESG, that's environment, social, and corporate governance. And you say that and people's eyes gloss over. Well, just cut through the veil. What ESG is whatever a liberal interest group is trying to achieve through big business. Just reorient your mind that way and you'll get it. But no matter what you want to call it, this is a paradigm shift where corporations are now beholden to a set of stakeholders rather than their shareholders. In fact, in 2019, you may have missed this, but the Business Roundtable repudiated its shareholder primacy model in favor of a stakeholder model. They then comically listed all of the stakeholders that they care about in a long set of commas. At the very end, we're shareholders. Before we can get into what we can do to stop ESG and woke capitalism, there's a few positive thoughts that I want to keep in mind because I scare people sometimes. If you think about the areas of culture that we've been ceding to the political left, big business is the most recent. So logically, temporally, it should be the easiest to win back, right? And the second, everything the left did in this space, they did it in plain sight. They gave us the roadmap. Shouldn't we be able to do the same to influence corporate behavior? Or better yet, try and get corporations out of the culture wars where they don't belong and get them back to neutral. So where are we right now with big business? Well, I think we're at a precipice. I got another question. If you could get in a time machine and go back to the 1960s to stop the cultural Marxists from taking over higher education, would you do it? I hope so. I think that's where we are with big business right now. We have an opportunity to course correct, but it's an ever-closing window. And the way that the left has marched through this cultural lane does parallel a lot with the way they took over academia, right? I like to say it's top down, it's bottom up, and it's outside in. Top down, right now, we have many corporate boardrooms that reflect the ideological diversity that exists in Yale's faculty lounge. That was intentional. The left has intentionally been placing liberals on boards for politics, not for business reasons. That's the same thing as tenure in academia, right? It was for academic freedom, yeah, right. It was to blackball conservatives from being able to get lifetime appointments at the academy. It's bottom up. What do I mean by that? When I meet with C-suite folks across industries, I ask them, why do you take liberal position A, B, C, X, Y, Z? It does not matter. They all give me the same response. Justin, that's what our employees want us to do. What's this? This is the cancel culture. Right? It's the same thing as the student on the campus who doesn't want to speak up because they know that they're beholden to that professor for their grade, and they know that professors hate their worldview. Same thing. It's the Coca-Cola employee that doesn't want to go to the training that tells them to both be less white without cultural appropriating. I don't know how they do that. But that's the cancel culture, is that individual who can't speak up for fear of reprisal at the workplace. And it's outside in. That's the world that I operate in. The number of well-coordinated, well-funded groups on the left that engage, and that's the most important part of my talk is the word engage, with big business on multiple levels every single day are legion compared with those on the right. We've ignored business to our peril. Folks, big business divorced the Republican Party over a decade ago, and unfortunately we just found the paperwork in the drawer last week. So where are we with big business? Let's take two issues that really can cut to the chase. Voter integrity and the Equality Act. This spring, I'm sure everybody witnessed as hundreds of major corporations came out against Georgia's voter integrity measure and others in the state of Texas and elsewhere. Of course, Major League Baseball infamously pulled its All-Star game out of Atlanta, cost the city of Atlanta businesses $100 million. And the Equality Act is another issue that really points to it. The Equality Act is passed the House, it currently sits in the Senate. It would do tremendous damage to women in multiple arenas. The most obvious is sports, but also in places like shelters and women-owned businesses. And it also does tremendous harm to Americans of faith. It quite literally excises RFRA, the 1993 Religious Freedom Restoration Act, from federal law. So where's business on that? Well, the Chamber of Commerce endorsed it, the National National Association of Manufacturers endorsed it, the Business Roundtable endorsed it, and more than 400 companies are aligned with the Human Rights Campaign currently lobbying to try and get that over the hump in the Senate. Folks, Barack Obama, when he was president, said religious liberty is a human dignity. We're now to the point that the Roundtable, NAM, and the Chamber are to the political left of Barack Obama. This is crazy, but it's happening in real time. Think about it. Please, for the love of Pete, can we stop saying Wont Go Broke? This is premised on a lie that conservatives have successfully boycotted companies until they've changed their behavior. Give me one example. And think about it, if you were gonna boycott every company in the Chamber, every company in NAM, every company in the Roundtable, you would be living in the woods, hunting, gathering your own food and making your own clothes. So you can't possibly boycott your way out of the problem. If you take a list of the ideals that you hold dear and add them to the first freedoms from our founding fathers, there's just so many companies that are such bad actors. And they're often even worse than government. Take freedom of speech. My friend Breitbart CEO Larry Soloff can walk freely in America. And as long as he doesn't yell fire in a crowded theater or crowded room, he can basically say whatever he wants without the brown shirts from the federal government rounding him up, right? Well, there's brown shirts that work in Cupertino, California at Google's headquarters that can and do restrict 98% of Breitbart's traffic. Who's doing more damage to freedom of speech with Breitbart? The federal government or Google? What about the Second Amendment? We've got liberals like Beto O'Rourke saying he's gonna come take your guns. Have you ever seen that guy? He can't take anybody's guns. But the Second Amendment is the same today as it was when James Madison penned it in 1789. As recently as 2008, the Supreme Court affirmed that the Second Amendment means exactly what it says, that you have the individual right to keep and bear arms. But Bank of America and Citi and other large banks have canceled their own gun clients. At the behest of the liberal Twitter mob, Walmart and Dick's pulled guns and ammo off the shelves. Who's doing more damage to the Second Amendment? Weak little Beto O'Rourke or corporate America? What about religious freedom? Now, I'll grant you, the federal government comes after that quite a bit. But corporate America is in on the act as well. In 2016, again, Georgia seems to be a hot button for all of these. They passed a state-level religious freedom restoration law at the legislative level. The liberals were outraged, but they had no power, except they did. They went to their friends in the corporation, in the C-suites. The NFL said that Atlanta would never get to host a Super Bowl. AMC Networks, Disney, and others threatened to pull filming from the Peach State, which they make a lot of money from. Then Governor Nathan Deal got weak knees and he vetoed the bill. These things happen basically every day. One day, Nike pulls the Betsy Ross tribute shoe at the behest of Colin Kaepernick. The next day, dozens of major corporations fund Black Lives Matter as they're burning American cities. This included Amazon and Microsoft and Pepsi, by the way. And the day after that, we have Gillette razors not only decrying whatever so-called toxic masculinity is, but they glorify transgenderism. Folks, to figure out what we must do to stop corporate America's march to the left, we got to answer a few basic questions, okay? First, how does the left influence corporate action and why? I'll start with the why. In my estimation, the left has used corporate activism so well because it realizes three key things. Corporations are extremely amenable to pressure, much more so than many of our gerrymandered politicians, right? They can move more quickly than the political, legislative, or legal process to affect change, and they can have an immediate economic impact on a very targeted region. Again, think of Atlanta losing $100 million overnight by the All-Star game getting ripped out. So, politics is downstream from culture, we all know that, but I'll add that it's upstream from business these days. So how? The second question, how does the left do it? That's the most important word, again, of the talk, engagement. Instead of taking your voice out of the discussion, which is what divesting and boycotting is, put your voice back in the room. If we took our voice out of the voter integrity discussion in Georgia, who's left? Stacey Abrams. Folks, that loudmouth has a big enough voice already. Let's not give her a megaphone. And there's lots of entry points for engagement. In my universe, one way the left engages is through the shareholder vote. Thousands of votes are cast each year that have a huge impact on our culture, and the evidence bears out that folks in this room aren't paying attention to them. Every year at annual shareholder meetings, there's 3 sets of votes, one for the board members, one for management proposals, and one for shareholder proposals. And frankly, it's become a shameful episode. It's the equivalent of a red or purple state election that goes blue every single year because the left shows up to vote and we don't. Part of this reason for the imbalance is there are two firms that control over 90% of the market for recommending how to vote. They're called ISS and Glass Lewis, and they are completely woke. You add to that Blackrock and Larry Fink and the passive investors who changed the paradigm for large investment houses in 2018 when he started voting in favor of many liberal ESG resolutions. That's how you get to the point where in 2018, liberal shareholder proposals broke every record they had ever set. They smashed it in 2019, you can guess. They smashed it again in 2020, and yes, they've already broken it in 2021. Stop and think about that. Put it in the context of politics. If conservative lost 4 consecutive political election cycles this badly, this group and every other right-of-center organization would meet every single day and twice on Sunday to try and figure out what to do about it. But I have to say, what are we doing to try and fix corporate America's march to the left and the corrupt rigged proxy vote? Precious little. Folks often ask me this, Justin, well, why are shareholder proposals even important? Why are they important? Why do they matter? It's simple. They move the cultural needle. I'll give you one issue. 3 and 4 years ago, the left was filing lots of shareholder resolutions essentially demanding affirmative action for boards of directors. This was supported by groups like the SEIU, As You Sow, and Jesse Jackson. Well, fast forward to 2020. That's when Goldman Sachs said, we're not going to finance your IPO unless your board is sufficiently diverse. Nasdaq has put together a plan, by the way, we're suing them on it, whereby they are going to delist any company from their public exchange that doesn't have 2 board seats set aside for affirmative action candidates. Think about that. In 3 to 4 years, the agent of change went from Jesse Jackson and the SEIU to Goldman Sachs and the Nasdaq. And this happens on issue after issue after issue. So, what are the liberal activists asking for these days? Well, when it comes to boards, you're going to love this. They want board set-asides, board quotas for, quote, non-management employees. That's code for union folks. I don't know about you, but I don't want the SEIU dictating corporate policy in America. They're asking to defund conservative politicians, that is, take their PAC money back. They're calling on critical race theory trainings to be implemented up and down the supply chains at these companies. Why do you think Coca-Cola is asking their employees to be less white? The shareholder activists are demanding it. Outside of the shareholder activism space, there are so many other tools that the left uses that we simply don't even engage in. Again, they run the search firms that find new board members. They sell diversity trainings on LGBTQ causes and critical race theory. They're now running the HR departments. And a lot of folks probably don't realize this. Do you realize that right now, there are so many survey questions that are sent from interest groups to publicly traded companies that the Fortune 500 all now have departments that are set up that work year-round only to respond to survey questions that are then inputted into rating systems. How many questions are they getting from us? Are you questioning any companies? Who here has heard of the Human Rights Campaign? Show of hands. About 17 years ago, they started something called the Corporate Equality Index. Okay, this is a powerful rating system. Initially, it was set up just to see if companies were treating their gay and lesbian employees with health care benefits the same as their straight employees. That was their original goal. But once they got companies beholden to getting a perfect score every year on the HRC, they tweak it every year. So about 5 years ago, they said, okay, well, if you want to keep your perfect score this year, you have to have an outward-facing event and an internal training that promotes LGBTQ causes. Why do you think the advertising you see these days looks the way it does? So they got the companies to agree, and they all, dutifully went along. Well, guess what? Now, 2 years ago, they changed it. You have to have 3 internal LGBTQ trainings and 3 public-facing events every single year that promote LGBTQ causes. 2 years ago, 40% of the ads in the Super Bowl promoted LGBTQ causes in one way or another. That's only one check mark. Now you better go find a parade, and you better go find another advertising model. Now, how many folks in here have heard of the CPA Index? It's another huge rating system for corporate Americas. Well, this was ostensibly supposed to be about transparency in politicized corporate giving. Yeah, right. Does anyone know what CPA stands for? Andy, you're in the audience, you know. It's the Center for Political Accountability. Do you know who funds that? George Soros. But guess what? Where does he fund it out of? The Wharton School of Business at Penn. So it has an academic veneer to it. Again, where are our questions to corporate America? So again, what's the most important word from today's talk? Engagement. Can conservative engagement even be effective in this space? It's a fair question. But do I look like someone that really likes to waste my own time? No. As the cancel culture comes for conservatives, I've personally protected more than 5.5 million American workers from losing their jobs for their private political activities. I did that through shareholder resolutions. After I engaged with one major bank, they stopped funding the Human Rights Campaign. And after I engaged with another huge financial institution, they stopped funding the Southern Poverty Law Center. Outside of filing proposals, I show up. The left knows the power of showing up. We have to do the same, folks. This year, this spring, after everything went up in arms in Georgia over voter integrity, I personally got the CEOs of Bank of America, Pfizer, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, all to walk back their comments calling Georgia's voter ID racist. All of them. I did it just by showing up at their annual meeting and speaking truth. They don't get a lot of truth. They get a lot of yes men. I have visions and plans for those who are willing to join forces to counter corporate America's march to the left, but you're going to need to be joyful servants, willing to approximate the left's army. And I make no promises this is going to be easy. There's going to be battle wounds. I can attest to that. I was physically assaulted one year at a Starbucks shareholder meeting simply for asking Howard Schultz why he was opposing President Trump's orders on immigration and travel. I was called a Nazi and a Klansman publicly at the Amazon shareholder meeting in 2019 simply for asking the company to diversify its board with something called viewpoint diversity, diversity of thought, not diversity of what someone looks like. So I wear these all as a badge of honor. Where are you going to pin your badges? If we're going to go down and get canceled, wouldn't you rather go down fighting anyway? I sure would. I'll close with this. In The Crisis, Thomas Paine made clear that certain struggles require high costs. He wrote, "Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods. It would be strange indeed if so celestial an article of freedom should not be highly rated. I'm going to pay such a price. I'm willing. I hope you'll join me in the battle." Thank you. Appreciate it.